I was having an amazing time playing one of my favorite games, Dead by Daylight. One of my favorite killers in the game is the Blight. Not playing him, of course, that never really goes well for me, but I love his overall aesthetic and the culture that he adds to the game. So much so that I actually made his own card and covered his lore in a previous video that you should go check out or something. But what makes Blight such a good and intriguing character is his blighted serum, and how whoever uses it becomes horrifically mutated and overall gross looking. And with only 18 characters having these mutated Blight skins, I wanted to just help behavior out a little bit and create a new one for the Knights. To start off, I knew I wanted the surrounding light / background to be dark, to make the orange mutation pop out to the viewer more. Taking into account that blue is the opposite to orange on the color wheel, I went for the dark blue as my base to start. I didn't want the card to feel like it was just a character model. I wanted him to be actually doing something, but still have a clear view of those changes. I also knew that I wanted his sword to be a very involved and active part of the painting because of its representation to who the knight is. In the game, when the knight summons his guards, he takes a knee and grabs onto his sword with both hands. I figured that animation with a forward view of the knight would allow for the sword to take up most of the lower space and force its acknowledgement, while keeping the knight's helmet and upper armor the main focus. So when painting, I decided to keep his default appearance as a baseline. I added his iconic red scarf and spiked shoulder plates, as well as details and shadowing and blending, as if it was the final design. Even though this feels kinda like a waste of time, knowing that it'll just be painted over, doing this now is much easier than having to try to paint around the main pieces later. When I was designing the card, I took a lot of inspiration from, obviously, the other blighted skins. But not wanting to just make the knight's mutations feel random, I dove deeper to understand the process the designers go through when creating these specialized skins. And I noticed that the blighted serum mutation usually reflects the uniqueness of each killer, amplifying the qualities in their lore or on their appearance that makes them them. For instance, the Legion's blighted skin has all 4 members merged into one person, which I thought was a really cool way to represent the group as one, and a good indicator of how I should go about my design. I knew the first thing I wanted to change was his eyes. I really hate the default design with his hair. I don't know why they added it. I think it feels really out of place and janky, and it takes away from his overall dark and mysterious aura that the skin has. So I decided to open up the eye slit entirely, and gave it a breaking / cracking feel. I wanted his orange infected eyes to be clear and visible, but I was struggling to pick between 2 designs. One was just a pitch black eye slit with only 2 plague written circles as eyes staring back at the viewer. The other design had the gap completely being filled with yellow and orange swirling colors. When thinking about the piece as a whole though, as cool as the dark and hidden eyes would look, I thought it would be much cooler if the eye slit gave the impression that his whole body was malformed, and the only thing really keeping him intact was his armor. Taking inspiration from the Lord of Frenzied Flame from Elden Ring, I wanted his skin to feel runny and kinda void of any real shape. I also wanted to add something personal from the knight's lore to keep that in-game culture alive in the card, so I decided to add his iridescent add-on, Eerie Company banner, on his back. I felt this would add to his already very heavy and blunt feel, while representing his leadership position as a general. Continuing on with my mutations, I added damage to his armor to represent windows into his mysterious true form, adding slashes onto his upper left chest and lower right stomach, while keeping in mind the position that the sword will be in for a good contrast of colors. I copied the sword design from the original skin. I thought about incorporating a blighting spreading feel on the sword, letting it travel from his hand and all the way down the blade. And as far as the actual skin would go, the sword would need to be different. But for the purpose of a clean looking card, I thought if the sword was blighted and flowing with orange mutation, it would oversaturate the subtleties of the knight's own deformities. So I decided to keep it the same and let the knight's armor speak for itself. Last thing I added was just his arms coming into frame and grabbing onto the sword. Knowing how much space they would take up, I ended up taking a lot of time to make sure that I got the right structure for the gauntlets and forearm pieces. The default skin did have spikes on his gauntlets, but I thought a cleaner stainless steel texture instead would look a little better. For the design on the flag, I looked at details in the icon image and used colors I took from the Knight faction in For Honor actually, which is where the Knight crossover came from in the first place. For his right, I wanted his infection to at least have the appearance of starting from there, and in the lower explanation, maybe he was fighting off the Blight and blocked with his hand that would inevitably end up being stabbed with the serum and spreading from there. So here, I wanted the armor to be completely eroded and his arm fully exposed. While the traditional Blight serum is bubbly and kinda gooey, much like the game Hollow Knight's infection, I wanted this one to keep that frenzied flame design. With the Knight being such a strong character, wielding a heavy set of armor and a longsword, I wanted the infection to have to mutate into something stronger to overtake such a strong-willed host like the Knight. Finally, I added tiny shading details on the fingers that really help shape the very fluid design, with it fading off as the armor covers the rest of the arm. Lastly, I just finished up some shading details and made sure to add that vibrant orange reflection onto his armor to make it feel present and real. I really hope you guys like my design for the Blighted Knight. I hope they actually add more Blighted skins in the future. If you guys want to see any more Blighted skins, let me know. Like the Artist, the Dredge will be really fun to do. Check out my other videos if you like this one, and thanks for watching.